everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to start with some introductions, like I just said, then go over quarterly comparisons using labor market report data, scenarios, data requests, and questions. So if we can start off by having everyone enter their name, organization, and the role in that organization in the chat, it just helps us lead the conversation. So I will start off by introducing myself. I am Haley Porter. I'm the Associate Project Manager and Research Analyst for WIN. So I do a lot of the labor market reports, assist with different data requests and our different projects on the research side. Kevin, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Haley. I'm Kevin Kranick. I'm one of the two economic research managers here at WIN, and I'm responsible for helping coordinate the projects that we have, all of our external facing documents and marketing collateral. I provide assistance with that, but primarily focused on supporting the labor market initiatives and our other funded projects. Thanks, Haley.
Perfect. So let's see, 12 people. Okay. So what we're going to do is, because this is the third part in our learning market series, we are going to do a recap quiz, which we do have to send a link through the chat. So you will copy that copy that link, go in and answer these 5 quiz questions. And once you do that, then hop back over into our meeting. So I will give everyone a few minutes, but it should lead you right to the quiz, and make sure you answer all 5. If you did not attend the previous 2, I apologize, do your best guess. And for those of you that joined after the introduction, go ahead and also, when you have a second, put your name, your organization, and your role in that organization in the chat. For those of you that just, oh, maybe they went off. Has anyone joined since we started this, Alicia?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was taking my quiz questions. Yeah, I think we'll just need to drop that link in the chat one more time. So if you're just joining us, we dropped in the slides and there's 5 quiz questions that kind of go over what we learned in the previous sessions, but also you can give your best guess if you didn't attend those.
All right, so it looks like we have 7 votes so far. We realized earlier that this is a little bit of a lag, but hopefully that should have given everyone enough time to put in their vote. And we'll see if more pop up along the way. Did anyone have any issues getting in before I start that? Go ahead and put in the chat or unmute yourself if you had any issues getting into the quiz. Okay. All right. So the 2 regional LMRs are produced quarterly while the rest are produced annually. So that is true. Every quarter, we produce the City of Detroit and WIN region LMRs And then annually, we do all of the counties in the Wynn region. Some of those are combined, so it doesn't equal out to every county having its own. And then we also do the state of Michigan as well as Wynn region and Detroit. So everyone got that one right. Yay. A drop in job postings always signals an economic slowdown. That is false. So we do have fewer job postings can also indicate a healthy labor market where most open positions are filled and unemployment is low, showing that supply and demand for workers are in balance. So if people are not leaving their jobs aren't open. So it just depends on the situation for that one. So it is a little bit of a tricky question. Okay, if unemployment seems low, the job market must be strong for everyone. That is false. Again, we tricked up a few people. While the 2024 unemployment rate was 4.5%, which is a historic low compared to the last 50 years, low unemployment can mask mismatches in job openings versus job seekers. Many employers still struggle to fill roles, and job seekers may find it hard to secure positions that match their skills. So again, there's so many different things that are involved in those numbers. The Wynn data team uses 0 to 2 years for entry-level jobs. Oh, we really got a few on that one. So on our labor market reports, our 0 to 2 years is what we use as the entry level for looking at different skills, the top posted jobs, and different things like that. And then which of these is not an occupation group used for our LMRs? So teacher. Hopefully I threw some of you off on that one. That was a tricky question. The teacher is a job title, not an actual occupation group that we use. So different types of teachers are included in our education occupation group. Our occupation groups are made up of many different job titles, positions within that education or healthcare, agriculture, all of those occupation groups. So awesome. Thank you so much for participating in that. Please, you're welcome to close that out now. We will not be using that again for the rest of the presentation. Does anyone have any questions on that part before I move on? Those were a review from the past 2 sessions that we had in May and in person. April? I don't remember when the first one was. All right. So then what we are going to look at is the quarterly comparisons. So our Q2 report just went out. So comparing Q2 and Q1 from between each other. So this is included, these charts are included in each of the LMRs. This one is Detroit's. And we're looking at the quarterly chart and the annual to date. So what we really focus on in these as the change from the first quarter. So looking at 5,044 people less in the labor force from Q1, but 1,714 more in employment, while 6,759 in unemployment less. So those are good figures. So labor force is going down, but also unemployment, there's less people in unemployment. So that's a great sign from Q1 to Q2. But then we also need to look at the change from year to year because they do fluctuate between quarters and in the end result in the differences between the years. So this is just 2025 year to date. And as you can see, the changes are not as dramatic between the years at this point. There's it actually shows a little bit different of a picture with unemployment only increasing or actually increasing by 1,000. While employment also increases and labor force increases. So at the end of the year, we will be able to look at those numbers again and see what overall happened within 2025. So then we also do this chart in part of the labor market reports. These are using those numbers we just saw. And we are looking at what just happened in 2024 to 2025. So again, the numbers increase it, or the labor force increased. The employment has also increased in 2025 so far. And the unemployment has also increased, but by very little. So these are averages, and we will definitely see a better picture at the end of the year. You can also see the huge dip in 2020. It's very dramatic, but we do look like we are recovering past COVID, past what we were at in before COVID as well. So those are good numbers. Sorry, I double clicked. Okay. So then again, the same charts for Winn region. We're looking at the percent change and the change from first quarter. These are a lot larger numbers because of the counties involved, but the labor force is decreasing again. Employment increased while unemployment decreased. So again, that's looking good from first quarter to second quarter. But then we look at the annual and the labor force gone up while the unemployment has gone down. So it's almost the opposite than just the quarterly change with a huge increase in unemployment. So again, those numbers will show could show a completely different picture by the end of the year once all the averaged months are averaged out. So, and here's for Winn region. So we're looking at the slight increase, a slight decrease, and a slight increase again. But a huge dip again for COVID, and we are still seeing way better numbers than pre-COVID. So good sign. So then we look at the quarterly posting analysis. So these are the job postings, unique job postings of the last quarter and the previous 4. So they have been going down. We can see that in between Q1 and Q2, they also went down in 2024 as well. So that might be a pattern that we're looking at, is that just employers post less during that time because of seasons, and it's right after Christmas and different things like that. These other numbers have stayed pretty much the same. There's not a huge difference between those, so that's interesting as well. So then we're going to look at a longer portion of time to see if that Q1 to Q2 stands up, which again, here's the beginning part of Q2 or of this year. So that's the decrease for 2024. But then in 2023, there was an increase during that time, as well as during 2022, there was a large increase. And 2021, there was a large increase during that time. So when we're looking at those numbers, we do have to be careful to make sure we are not just based off on the last year. It is a good chance to see what happened in that same quarter of the previous year, but then we sometimes need to go back farther to even draw any kind of conclusions, because that one did not stand up. So there's so many different reasons, again, for the postings. After COVID, people could be staying in their jobs, so they're not leaving. A bunch of people were, fired during COVID, laid off, and so now the postings went up during that, right after that, to try and hire people back, and so now they're slowly decreasing. There's so many factors to bring into that, and that's some of the reason for the labor market reports, in order to take a look at many different factors. So then we have the wind region. This is, although it's overall gone down, it's still interesting of the little jumps each quarter. So, but we do see a decrease between Q1 and Q2 for both 24 and 25. So that follows with Detroit's, but overall the decrease between all of those. So then we look at the past until 2020 as well. Again, oops, sorry about that. Looking at the decrease between 2024 and 2025, but then they had the increase as well for wind region of the increase in Q1 to Q2 for 2023, 2022, and 2021. So same as Detroit, which also is very similar right here. So the in white, or the kind of peachy color, is the same pattern. You can see exactly, I mean, follows it very closely for Detroit and wind region. So I just found that very interesting, that it was so similar between the two areas. Overall, the quarterly changes, there's not many changes in demographics, top jobs, wages, education, the skills. Pretty much all the other items there's not huge changes between the quarters. There's a lot more of the change that you can see annually, but not in these quarterly reports, just because of the small amount of time. The small amount of time. Sorry, my cat just jumped on my screen and closed everything out. Okay. Alicia, can you still see my screen share?
We can. Yep.
Okay,
yep, not a problem.
All right. So for quarterly changes, that's really what we look at. So then we're going to go into using the labor market report data. So we have a few suggestions that we're going to talk about. But first, I would like to see what everyone thinks for how you can use these in a narrative and needs statement and for a grant application. If you're focusing on the number of people in the occupation, focusing on education needed, and then so do 1 through 5 and match them with these on the right. So A, B, C, D, E. So if you want to enter those into just the chat for the Teams meeting, let's see how everyone does.
Haley, it's kind of small on the right. So can you just go over, is it possible to go over what A is, like what we're looking at?
Yeah, yep. So so A is looking at the education listed. And so we see the bars of no education listed, high school or GED, associate's degree, bachelor's degree, master's, and PhD or professional. The yellow is the one I was just showing, or sorry, no, it's the amount of employment. So it's not the ones I was just showing. It's the number of employment for different occupations, the amount of people in it. Though this blue one is the people living inside of, living outside of Detroit and working in Detroit, or living in Detroit and working outside Detroit. And then the one below that is the in-demand technical skills, in-demand foundational skills, in-demand certifications. And finally, the last one is the wages for the top occupation groups. And those are listed in 10th percentile, 25th percentile, median wages, 75th percentile, and 90th percentile. So in the chat, just put what you think matches 1A, 1B, 1C, whatever, and each of them match.
Thanks.
Okay, so it looks like we have a little bit of variety in our answers. We will go through these. So focusing on focusing on the number of people in an occupation. So this yellow chart would be the correct one. So 1B. And these can be a variety of different answers. But this is how I would do it based on my knowledge of the LMRs. So we would look at the number of people in the occupation, the increasing, decreasing numbers, how many are in 2025, different things like that are shown from this chart. Focus on education needed. So would be 2A. This is where the education is listed of how many the job postings and the education that they post for the job listings. Focus on training needed, so 3D, is the in-demand technical skills, the in-demand foundational skills, and the in-demand certifications that are listed in job postings. They're focusing on livable wages. You could look at what jobs are, 4E. You could focus on what jobs are paying, what some jobs are paying way more than others, the difference in those jobs and the requirements, and what those are compared to livable wages. And then focus on housing. So 5C, because you can look at how many people are living in the city and how many are working outside of it, and why are they working outside and living in, or why are they doing the opposite, where they not living in the city if they're working in it. So thank you very much to everyone that participated in that. All right. So then this next one is looking at wage data for the pre-apprenticeship program. So here we can look at the pre-apprenticeships and what, say, an electrician is making at the median wage or starting off and along the way. So that data can be used for information to promote apprenticeships as well, and showing how much they are making for median wages. It can also be used to show what they start off as and what the training helps them gain wage-wise. Because usually these 10th percentile are more entry level, and as they get more skills, they go up. So we are going to do another activity. If you can calculate the median wages, so the annual salaries for both of these, this is the 24-27 is the lowest on this of the top occupations, and the 51-59 is the highest. So calculate what that would be annually. And Alicia, how well can you see these numbers?
I can totally see these numbers, but I'm a communications visual story person. So now you're asking me to do math. So can you give me any more direction, teacher?
Okay, that's the hard part. Okay, figure out what that would be mathematically, how many hours are in a week and how many weeks are in a year. Multiply. Yep.
Thank you, Jessica, in the chat. Much appreciated.
She's helping you. So go ahead and put your answers in the chat.
Can you repeat the question again? I got stuck at the math section.
So just figure out the annual salary for both these two that are highlighted.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, it looks like we have a lot of non-math people. Perfect. There we go. Getting some answers. Awesome. So us, our data team loves math, so this is always fun for us. It looks like everyone did really well. So if you look at the construction manager, so the top posted occupation for Q2, I don't remember if this was Detroit or Wynn region now. I usually write that down. But they were getting paid $51.59 median salary, or hourly salary is the median wage. So that annually is $107,307, which is awesome. That's a great wage. And then if we look at the lowest, which is still above the median, state median wage, the 24-27, that it would be $50,481 a year. So great job on the math, everyone. Bringing out those early skills. All right, so another way that you can use the LMR data is by comparing national data compared to your region. So if we're looking at the quarterly ones, we look at Detroit, and you can look at, for energy postings in 2024, the 6,657 unique postings compared to the 2.47 million in United States as a whole. Looking at the median salary is $39.82, which is a little bit higher than the United States median salary for energy. So that's a good sign. And then looking at like bachelor's degree is the same. The top posted occupation was general and operations managers for both. And also the top posted specialized skills was project management. So these are interesting if you are doing comparisons to national data for different projects. And it's just another way to use this data. Then doing a talent pipeline, helping individuals look at where they can gain training, improve their skills in order to keep moving up in their career or in order to get into an occupation. So for this one, this is more of a personalized question or your choice. There's not really a correct answer, but what would be the top skill, certification, or education you would have someone who wants to go into the IT focus? So this is all IT for Detroit Q2 to gain on or for gaining or improving that skill. What would you want them to focus on? So go ahead and put that in the chat. And I see someone has, oh, or you can say it out loud too if you want to unmute. So for me, yeah, this is looking at the top ones. I just did computer science, communication, the certified information systems, security professional, and then the bachelor's degree because it is the highest education requested. But it depends on many different things and what this person has. And these are just the top 5 for each. So if anyone was to ever, if you are interested in these, we can also, we've done pathways for many different occupations that helps include more information in those, but also you can always request information too if you want to go more in depth into what skills and certifications are needed. But pretty much any of these would have been a good answer. So I gave you an easy one at the end. So thank you to you guys for participating. Finally, if please enter into the chat any other ways that you have used the labor market report data. We listed a few right there, but if there are any other ways they've used it recently or in the past few years, let us know in the chat. We'd love to see other ways people are using the data and how we can help with that. And I will allow you guys to do that as we go on to the next section. If we do have any pop up, we'll discuss them at the end. So next, we will go into some more scenarios for using the labor market data. Kevin?
Yeah, I'm actually going to request that you jump back 2 slides, Haley, just because I saw some interesting comments in the chat and I thought it would be good to give some additional context. So we saw some good comments here. Christian chimed in with agile methodology. We do see that one in there. And then Lori made a comment as well, and Christian gave a thumbs up reaction, which tells me that there's more than one person with the same idea, talking about penetration testing for IT. So one thing that we like to clarify about the labor market reports and about all the information and the metrics that we include, all the different measures that we have, is that this is based on volumes of data. So whenever you see something in the labor market report and you think, maybe something's missing here. Maybe penetration testing ought to be one of those top level in-demand skills listed for IT. But what I want to remind everybody is that all of the data that we aggregate for the LMRs is based on a high volume of input. So for those who tend to skim the introductory section of our LMRs, we do include some important context. So if you're somebody who's used our LMRs for years, maybe you haven't read that introductory part. I know I'm definitely guilty of skimming the introductory section on a lot of things that I like to consume. But one of the things that we highlight in that introduction is that we use job postings data as a proxy for demand. So when we look at this, we can see, and I'm just going to use the highlighted boxes that Haley has on screen here. So a bachelor's degree is 61.4% of all of the employer job postings that indicated that they would either prefer or require a bachelor's degree. That's not to say that there aren't plenty of other jobs that require less than a bachelor's degree or more than. It's just showing what the data says. And the same thing applies to the in-demand certifications and the foundational skills and the technical skills. When we only have so much room to spare on each of these reports, and we are reporting on so many different occupation groups for so many different regions, we do really have to condense everything down, which is why you typically see only the top 5 or top 10 items for each one. So it may very well be a case with this particular example that penetration testing might show up as the number 6 in-demand technical skill, or maybe it's number 10. So anytime that you're consuming our reports, if you see something and it's just making you wonder, shouldn't this be in there? Or why does this read a certain way? Why is this included? Another example that I can see on screen here, and this has come up before, for in-demand foundational skills, you can see problem solving and then troubleshooting. Well, a lot of people might use those two phrases or terms interchangeably, but they are in fact distinct. So if you ever do have a question like that or something doesn't make sense, don't hesitate to reach out. We're more than happy to offer clarification on that. But that's what I wanted to do really quickly before we jump into the scenarios, was just talk about how we arrive at this data and why we include some elements and not others. It is simply a matter of how representative is this data of the labor market at scale. So when we are talking about the entirety of the IT occupation, penetration testing just doesn't happen to be one of those top 5. Again, if we included the top 10 or top 15, it might very well be, but for all occupation groups, what we are aiming to deliver is representative data points that can be used and applied across most occupations. So thank you, Haley, for entertaining me there for a minute. If you want to jump back over to the scenario slides, that would be great.
Kevin,
Please
while you're jumping into that, I just want to mention too, just another friendly reminder that if that data is not showing up for you guys as WIN board member organizations, you're more than welcome to put in a data request form, which we'll give that link in the chat and we can figure out the info. Sorry, I have dogs barking.
Yep, thanks, Alicia. So that's a great reminder, and we will see a slide for the data requests at the very end. But for those of you who may have less experience with WIN, we are also very well versed in large-scale project deployments. So I won't spend too much time on it, and maybe we'll circle back at the end, especially if there's questions. But we get solicited for all types of projects throughout the year. Sometimes it is a 3 or 4 month project. Most recently, we wrapped up a project related to the hydrogen economy and jobs involving hydrogen, which was over a 1-year study for us. So whether it's something that might only take 5 or 10 minutes or something that maybe you're seeing a bigger picture where there's a lot of community benefit or that there might be funding available, please feel free to loop us in to those conversations. We're more than happy to speak to our strengths and what we can bring to the table as your partner for those. So yes, thanks again, Alicia, for the plug. And Haley, if you'd go to the next slide, please. So one of the things that we talked about with this final presentation was we wanted to make sure that not only did we provide an adequate educational piece with these first two presentations, but that we were tying everything together and really pushing everyone's limits by the third and final session here today. So we're going to look at some different scenarios. Now, some of these might be familiar if you were at the second meeting that was in person, but I see we have quite a bit better participation here today. So hopefully this is going to be new and engaging for at least a handful of people. But again, this is really going to test the knowledge that you've gained along the way, while also providing that final opportunity in this one-on-one environment where you can ask me questions, ask Haley questions. If there's anything that you don't understand about the labor market or these types of scenarios that we deal with on a week-by-week basis, then we would love the opportunity to coach everyone up even further. So we'll start with challenge number one, choosing an industry for reskilling. The scenario is that Detroit's labor force grew to 263,000 in Q2 of this year, but the unemployment also increased by 6.3%. That was from 2024. Healthcare is the most in-demand sector. We see this very commonly. And there were 6,470 unique job postings during Q2 2025 for the city of Detroit. This was 1,300 more than the business and finance sector, which was in second place. And among the composition for the total labor force in Detroit, as well as healthcare being very representative of the in-demand occupations, the top occupation is registered nurses, which had nearly 2,500 postings all by itself. So your challenge for everybody who wants to add any comments to the chat here is that your workforce board has limited training funds to support reskilling programs for displaced workers. You have to decide which sector to focus on. And so we're primarily going to be looking at those top handful of sectors. The healthcare sector, business and finance is another one. If you can come up with one creatively on your own, one of the other 7 or 8 sectors that you think might be a missed opportunity from what we've described herein, then feel free to use that as well. But we want you to decide where to allocate these funds. So the questions for everyone: which occupation group might offer the best opportunity for immediate reemployment? So this could be a trick question. Pay close attention. Second, how would you weigh the volume of job postings versus the educational requirements for those individual jobs? Again, if we're focused on reskilling, what's the time trade-off here? And then third, what additional data would you want before making this decision? Would you ask WIN for wage data? If this was an actual exercise and you knew that you could access this data from WIN, what are some other data points that would be helpful for you in making those decisions? So would you want to see wage data for registered nurses, for the business and finance sector? Would you want to see growth trends or projected demand? So any of the above, feel free to add anything in the chat, whether it's a question, if you need something clarified. But overall, the question we're trying to ask is, how would you allocate funding if you were in charge of the funding for your organization to support reskilling programs for displaced workers? So we'll go ahead and give everybody a few seconds there. As much as everyone knows I love to continue talking, I'll give everyone a brief reprieve, and we'll check back in just a moment. I am very curious to see if anybody picks up on something outside of healthcare or business and finance. We know that Detroit has a very versatile workforce with a lot of highly skilled and highly educated workers across many fields. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and give my feedback. Alicia, if you wouldn't mind monitoring the chat so we can pick up some other opinions, that would be great. So if I were in charge of this data, the first thing I always do from a data-minded individual's perspective is I'm going to want more data. So I would be starting with question 3. And I would want to know, what are the wage opportunities? And that's where one of those things like the wage tables that we include with the top 10 occupations in all of our LMRs, those are very useful because not only can they be a highly incentivizing piece for maybe a Michigan Works coach or somebody who's doing career counseling at a high school, that can be a very motivating piece. I know when we were looking at the wage table that Haley had on screen earlier, that can be very eye-opening for a number of people, whether that's a young worker or an incumbent worker looking to change careers or maybe do something a little bit different with their existing training, using some upskilling. Those wage tables can be very useful as an educational piece and a motivational piece because it can let you see what your career opportunities might be along a similar trajectory. So the first thing I would want is more wage information so that I can communicate to the job seeker. I would also be very interested in the growth trends, both in terms of net increase as well as percentage increase. And the reason I would want both is because a net increase on a field like registered nurses is going to be far more indicative than a percentage increase. When you have a very largely representative occupation like registered nurses, 0.1% is not going to seem like very much. But when you consider the net increase or decrease from one quarter to the next, it may very well be a larger figure than a 10% increase for a much smaller and less representative occupation. So I would want to see growth trends, both net and percentage based. And then I would hopefully be able to access some projected demand data as well. And once I have all of that data, probably a few other things as well. Certainly the credentialing requirements, because that's going to tell me whether we need to focus on workers that are going to need to join a 6 to 12-month program for a certificate, whether they are going to have very good odds of getting employment from an occupation that might require 60% bachelor's degree by job posting. So those are all types of data that I would want to use for my personal decision making to help inform a job seeker, and to also provide information for my organization where we ought to allocate that funding. So when I'm talking about allocating funding, I'm looking for greatest impact. So how can we get more people to work in less time? So that's going to be primarily focused on those entry-level jobs, those lower lower barrier to entry positions where you might just require a certificate as opposed to a 4-year degree. That's going to be the most immediate impact, and it can also be a more effective way to provide that funding, because just to give a very easy to understand example, for every one person that we might be able to support with tuition assistance for a bachelor's degree, we could have probably supported 5 to 10 seeking a certificate. So it really is a matter of how much opportunity exists in the market, what is the volume and what is the potential of workers who you can provide assistance to based on your location and demographics and the types of employers that are in the immediate area, and how can we do this for the most affordable approach. So basically, which opportunities are going to give you the most bang for your buck, the most results for your participants, and drive the most results at the end of the day, so that you can hold up a sign and say, we supported 200 job seekers, we supported 5 job seekers, whatever that may be. But I think impact is the driver that we are primarily focused on. So Lori has some great comments here. I'm going to go ahead and just read straight from that. Lori, I hope that's okay. Healthcare certainly in demand, may take some increased investment. Absolutely. Securing training and enable folks to retain income levels. Yep. Data looking at the wage gaps. Wage gaps is a really important point, Lori. I'm glad you mentioned that. We certainly have seen wage gaps play out. I know that that's something that's near and dear to a lot of people, especially in certain occupations, or even entire occupation groups where the wage gap or the training gap or the skills gaps are much more pronounced than they would be in other occupations where there's much more equal representation. Cost of training and retraining and upskilling, absolutely. unique journey to traverse. And that's a great point too. When we talk about the learning journey of somebody who's seeking a career change, or perhaps they're just starting out in their career. This is a conversation that's very near and dear to me because I do have a high school student at home who is a junior this year. And so we've been having a lot more conversations at home about things to consider with respect to a career. What is the working environment like? And going back to Lori's comments, what does the journey look like? Will you not only enjoy the working conditions, but the types of people you'll be interacting with? Will you enjoy whether this is a job where you are working by yourself most of the time, or do you want something working with a lot of other people? So there's many, many factors that influence the jobs that we ultimately pursue, but the journey is one that should not be understated. Great point there, Lori. And then job postings, not necessarily accurate in terms of what is available in cross-training opportunities, 100%. If you take a single occupation, which is another nuance to the labor market reports. We have the occupation groups, and then within those groupings, we have the occupations that are defined by the SOC codes. When you break that down even further, the more granular you get with the data, the more insightful it tends to be. So taking one SOC code and breaking it down into even multiple different types of jobs that are similar but not exactly the same, that can also be revealing. And I think many of us intuitively know that from one employer to another, the same job might look a little bit different. Right. So the data that we provide to our partners and to the general public is really just meant to be a starting point. It is a conversation piece to get the ball rolling on where your interests might be and where your interests align with the work that you would like to put in to be part of that occupation sector. So it's a highly nuanced discussion. There's so many different talking points. I would love to be a fly on the wall in the office of a Michigan Works agency where, they're doing some live interactive work with some of their constituents. So all of these are great conversations. And Lori, thank you so much for, excuse me, for your feedback as well. So if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and move on to challenge number 2, if you would please, Haley. So here we have employer engagement priorities. So in this context, we're looking at the top posting employers, and we're going to talk about an employer engagement initiative, since that's another core activity that WIN is involved with. So for this scenario, your top posting employers are Henry Ford Health, DMC Sinai Grace, DTE Energy, Deloitte, and Huntington Bankshares. The Business and Finance Group shows strong demand for sales reps, project managers, and financial managers, while the energy demand focuses on general and operations managers and engineers. Your challenge is to lead an employer engagement initiative and can only target 3 large employers this quarter. So for the discussion questions, which employers would you prioritize and why? I'll give everyone a hint. If you think back to the data we provided in the last challenge, number 1, you may have a head start on this one. Item number 2, how would you align training programs with the specific skills mentioned in postings? That could include project management, accounting, HVAC, etc. And what metrics would you track to measure success? So once more, we'll take a brief break, and I think we may end up skipping the last 1 or 2. Alicia or Haley, I'll let the 2 of you chime in if we might have time for that or not, but I'll give everyone a brief break to add to the chat if you have thoughts on this one as well. I believe you would definitely have to have a very strong understanding of labor market activity, the labor market reports, or perhaps Win internal operations. I think that might be what's giving Lori her advantage here in the chat. But thinking about employer engagement activities, there's so much to be said about how the funding is allocated and how the different initiatives may look when they're rolled out, because there's so many different ways to go about employer engagement. WIN has a huge hand in employer engagement. A lot of our initiatives involve employer engagement. Unfortunately, I don't get the opportunity to do quite as much there, being on the data side of things for WIN, but I do hear a lot of the activities, and it really is boots on the ground work that drives a huge difference in the end. So for me personally, looking at which employers would I prioritize and why, I made a comment that the last slide could have been a bit of a hint, knowing that there is a very, very strong healthcare sector for the city of Detroit. So knowing that healthcare is a very strong sector and that Henry Ford Health is one of the top employers, I would be wanting to commit at least some of my resources to contact with Henry Ford Health, specifically focusing on some of those lower education occupations, or perhaps the lower barrier to entry occupations that are very easy or quick from a relative point of view to upskill or train workers so that we can get them in the Henry Ford Health system and working. So that would certainly be a very strong incentive. Looking at the business and finance group with strong demand for sales reps and project managers, financial managers, and then general and operations managers, I think I would round out my top three probably with Huntington Bank Shares and DTE Energy. One thing that I didn't mention, but I will now, there really is no wrong answer here, right? Anytime that we're talking about employer engagement initiatives with internal discussions here at WIN, it's always in terms of trade-offs, right? If we work with this employer but not this employer, if we focus on this occupation but not this occupation, everything is discussed in terms of trade-offs, right? Which that tends to be the case with a lot of things in economics. It's very often not a black and white tit for tat scenario. It's, if you adjust this metric, how much is it going to shift this other metric, right? So a lot of the discussions that we have internally involve analyzing what those trade-offs mean and making the best decision with the resources we have available. So I see that there is some typing in the chat, but I'll quickly circle back to Alicia and Haley. How are we looking for time? Do we want to do challenges 3 and 4 as well?
Yeah, let's do them. And I also am going to put a survey in the chat. If people do have to bounce out a little early, that's totally fine. Just please fill out our survey and give us some feedback so we can either continue these or not. Oh, and I never sent my responses to that scenario, so I'm going to send that. My bad. But yeah, let's go through them since we have some time.
Okay, sounds great. So I do see Lori's got another comment here. It is a challenge. And I'm glad that you acknowledged that, because I wanted to illustrate that even those of us that are in WIN and we have these types of meetings and these types of discussions every single week, it's still highly nuanced. And depending on the types of data that you have access to or what you're using, again, there may not be a right or wrong answer. So business and finance, Lori was thinking along the same lines I was. Engineers right up there. Yep. Align training programs, assess incumbent training needs and align those providers, and short-term internal training to ensure onboarding. Yeah, excellent points. So this is where I think the breadth and the depth of the WIN team really stands out, because Lori is much more involved with these things than I have been. So she would be much more expert on understanding how some of these scenarios play out in real time with very real discussions that take place. So yeah, excellent points, Lori. I like that you made the comment about short-term internal training. We do hear about that quite often, that a lot of these employers, especially the larger employers, they have their own on-site or internal training that they will offer to their employees. Sometimes that job is outsourced to a local university or community college. Sometimes we even see that with a third-party trainings center or facility. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to skin the proverbial cat with workforce, certainly. And then Alicia, thank you. You chimed in. Henry Ford Health and DTE absolutely focus on apprenticeships and showcase the return on investment on the job training, credentials and wage scale, all good stuff. So definitely, please complete that survey. Just another shameless plug for Alicia so that we can have more feedback to work with and hopefully make these even more fun and engaging in the future. And then shifts taking away, have many employers pushing pause, stepping back. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Great point. So I think that's all the remarks we have for number 2. Haley, if you would please forward to challenge number 3. And I'll try and run through these last 2 a little bit faster. I do want to make sure everybody has a chance to do the survey and that I'm not too distracting. So for challenge 3, designing a talent pipeline for IT. We've had a lot of internal discussions regarding IT. I'm sure with the development of artificial intelligence, how we've seen that really blossom in the market, that I'm sure IT has been more of a central focus for a lot of people on the call today. So for this particular challenge, we're going to design a talent pipeline. And the context is that Detroit had nearly 1,800 IT job postings during Q2, led by software developers with over 500 unique postings, and computer occupations all other. So 418 postings there. Those were the top 2 as far as job posting demand. 61% of postings required a bachelor's degree, while 330 postings targeted workers with 2 to 3 years of experience. So not quite entry level, but not highly experienced either. So we have a lot of job postings that are looking for a moderate amount of work experience, and better than half of them also requiring a bachelor's degree. Your task is to propose a talent pipeline strategy that can prepare entry-level candidates for IT roles over the next 18 months. The discussion questions: how would you design an on-ramp for candidates without a bachelor's degree? Which employers would you approach first for co-designing curriculum? And lastly, how would you use the wage data to motivate participants and funders? Now, rather than taking a break for this one, I'm just going to run through, because I think having concrete examples can be very helpful in conceptualizing some of the things that we've talked about. So for instance, in fact, WIN did have an internal discussion followed by a discussion with one of our immediate stakeholders and WIN board partners, as well as one external partner located in New York, I believe. This was a conversation that took place about 2 months ago, and this New York-based employer was somebody who had been brought in as interim CEO of a IT talent consultancy. And he shared something that both WIN and the WIN board partner who was in on that meeting, we all found incredibly encouraging and innovative as well. So what they've done as an IT consultancy is identify low-level positions. And when I say low-level, I just mean low credential or very easy to access careers. There's low barriers to entry in terms of the education and skills requirements. So this will play into some of the data we see on the challenge here. But what this employer did is they aligned their interests in terms of skills. So that's another thing that we've seen play out over the last several years, is we're slowly seeing this shift from a credential-based economy to a skills-based economy. Now, I do not have concrete data that I can provide right this moment in this meeting to support that, but just as a general statement, we have seen a lot of employers making that shift. So what this consultant has done based out of Buffalo. That's where I was thinking of them from. So this Buffalo-based consultancy has begun working with a bank using the overlap in skills between what the bank was hiring for and what those skills may translate to in an IT setting further down their occupation pipeline. So what they've done is simply looked at the skills overlap between this occupation that is in very high demand, but is primarily found in banking systems, and they've aligned it with an IT occupation where the worker can get started right away. They can begin gaining experience. They can participate in some of that employer-based training and then slowly work into other areas of the bank where they might have more upward mobility in terms of career opportunities. They may also take the opportunity to gain additional skills and move on to another company. What happens, what this employer described to us is a win-win because these workers are getting educated, they're getting experience, they're getting a paycheck, probably most important to them, and they're able to take all of these skills and build them while retaining employment and still creating opportunities for their future. So in this particular example, they're taking an occupation that is very similar, albeit in a different sector, and they're finding a win for the employer, a win for the worker, and a win for that worker's future by giving them the opportunity to earn a living wage and gain skills for the career that they want to have. The employer is able to fill occupations that they would traditionally have to target a different type of banking employee for, and so everybody wins, everybody gets something out of it. So that would be one option for a talent pipeline strategy, is maybe just thinking outside of the box. What other types of employers may have high demand within our geographic focus, and how can we align those interests with the types of occupations that our job seekers are really looking for? So I don't see any other comments there. So I guess that's just some of the conversation that we have, some of the things that we've seen. So maybe that's what your on-ramp looks like, is creating that win-win scenario based on the local strengths or employers available and willing to do this type of coordinated work. Which employers would you approach first? Again, I think we focus on where is the demand for employment now and what is the skill overlap with those high demand occupations with the skills demand that the worker may be looking for. And then how would you use wage data? I think I already covered that pretty well in the previous slide, using that as an incentive piece, being able to demonstrate opportunity further down the career roadmap, and so on. So that's challenge number 3. We'll get to the last one. Haley, if you would click for me just once more. So retention and upskilling in the skilled trades. So the skilled trades experienced a 1% decline in employment from 2024, while the maintenance and repair worker SOC was the top posted job with 358 postings and a median wage of $23.29 per hour, which is above the state median. Your challenge is a major manufacturer reporting high turnover among entry-level maintenance workers, and you've been asked to recommend training strategies, or retention strategies. So the discussion questions: would you focus on wage adjustments, career ladder, or training programs to improve retention? How would you use this labor market data to justify your proposal to company leadership? And lastly, what partnerships, and that could be technical schools, trade unions, anything of that nature, which partnerships could help implement your solution? Now, this one is a little less technical in nature, so I would invite everybody on this very last challenge of the very last part of our 3-part presentation series this year. Go ahead and jump in. Let's send this group off with a bang. Feel free to throw anything at all in the chat, even if it's just a thank you for the time and commitment from our experienced team. I know I want to give thanks to Haley and Alicia for putting in all the work to coordinate and make these presentations possible, as well as to the other WIN staff that have jumped in and contributed to the discussion. And I really do appreciate everybody. And a special thank you to everybody who took time out of their day to listen to us speak for an hour. We do hope you gained something from it. So if you have any input for this last slide here, we'll give everybody a few more seconds, maybe have some final discussion points, and then we'll flip over to the last slide where we will quickly revisit data requests and other work with WIN. And Christian, I see this was a comment from the previous challenge, but very much appreciated. Something I want to highlight was your mention of KPIs. For anybody that doesn't use KPIs, or maybe you're unfamiliar with them, I would think everybody on this meeting would know, but those are your key performance indicators. So what are the metrics that you're tracking in order to define improvement or decline across those measures? Typically taken before and after, sometimes before, during, and after an initiative has been implemented so that you can measure progress. That gives you tangible results. It allows you to point back to specific activities and say, this was successful, this was not. So absolutely, KPIs are, I would argue, a necessary point of work for all of our activities so that we can measure and define what success looks like in the workforce development space. So a few other comments here for challenge 4. Is wage the issue, or is it mentorship? That's a great question. Lack of mentorship would certainly be a consideration for a lot of people in the employment scenario. Many other questions come to mind. Data, doing internal surveys. Yep. And that just goes back to my remarks about the KPIs. Internal surveys are another wonderful opportunity to capture data that you can analyze and measure feedback, measure performance. I love surveys. For those that haven't listened to me speak the last couple of years at WIN, that's something that I did with my former employer. We were very heavy into consumer level surveys that were done at scale. So I strongly believe in the types of data that you can capture and analyze from surveys if they're done right. Exit interviews, yep, absolutely. See if anything pops out. Yep, we're looking for trends. Other external issues occurring, impacting significant entry-level departures. Yep. That's a great point, Lori. If we're seeing a large exit of entry-level workers, but not other types of workers, then clearly something is not functioning as intended. And that would be worth exploring to figure out why. The exit interviews are a great suggestion there. And then for part 3, partnerships, all the above, any invested party, absolutely. We'll take the money and we'll run with it, right? And then Jessica has some comments. Apprenticeships for the skilled trades. Companies are seeing high turnover in entry-level workers. Apprentices appreciate the investment in their development and tend to stay in a position longer. That's excellent feedback, Jessica. Thank you for adding that. I happen to live in an area that is I won't say dominated by skilled trades, but there's certainly very strong representation from the skilled trades. And I've always heard very positive things about the apprenticeship experience. And that's not even just to say that it's exclusive to skilled trades. I think one of the evolving items that we've observed the past couple of years is the inclusion of apprenticeship type programs for non-traditional apprenticeships. So when a lot of people, myself included, especially when I first started at WIN, if I heard about an apprenticeship occupation, I would automatically default to skilled trades. You know, is this an iron worker or a builder or a plumber, an HVAC technician maybe? Those are the types of things I used to think about. Now I've come to understand that apprenticeships are far more reaching in terms of the occupation groups that they affect nowadays and the opportunities that are available. So excellent to hear a good report on apprenticeships and the apprentice sentiment about being more valued and feeling like they are being invested into. That's an excellent point. Christian chimed in with career ladders, give your leadership solid boots on the ground perspective. Absolutely. And a level of empathy to those who are working the floor. Now, I've been working in what I think most people would characterize as white collar jobs for probably the past decade or so, but I certainly had my fair share of experience being a frontline worker, as I'm sure many people have. And I think we can all relate on some level or another to having that boots on the ground perspective and working the floor. It's a different type of experience, right? It's a different type of environment from the other workers that are involved in the production process or the service process, if it's a service company. Absolutely, I think having that perspective is very important. Excellent advice. So, Haley, if you want to go ahead and jump to one of our final slides here, please. We'll talk about data requests. I know I mentioned this earlier, but we'll give a few more minutes on this before we give everybody back a few minutes of their day. Again, I just want to say how thankful we are for everybody who took time out to participate and to join us for this final session. We hope that you found it entertaining, but at the very least, you're welcome for providing a calendar item to keep everybody going throughout their day. This was a wonderful 3-part series. We really had a lot of fun putting it together and coming up with different content for each one. We hope that it was helpful for everybody who had a chance. For those who did make all 3, we really want to thank you for your excellent participation. And for those who only attended 1 or 2, if you feel like you missed out on anything, again, this is how you find out. This is how you get a hold of us for more answers. So whether it is a question about a presentation, internal activities that WIN is focused on. I know we send a lot of emails, so we really appreciate everyone's patience for all the initiatives that we have hands on or that we are exploring. But revisiting my earlier comments, you can reach out to us and fill out the private data request form. Just one small distinction: when we are looking at a project that will take more than 1 to 2 days in terms of the amount of work that is required of WIN, we may request that you send us a full scope of work and that we explore it as a data project rather than a data request. A data request would be, what types of job postings are there for these certificates or vice versa? What type of certificates or programs should we consider? What type of skills are most in demand? So anything that's going to take, a few hours or less, although we do technically say 2 or fewer days to complete the data request, we will do that for free. That is for WIN board members as well as the public at large. So anything we can help with, do have a few examples there: soft skills, technical skills, in-demand qualifications, job posting volume and forecasts, but really anything to do with workforce development. We would love to be part of that conversation, whether you need our help or just want to have a discussion about that. This is how you can reach us: winintelligence.org/private-data-request-form. I believe we'll also be sending out the presentation afterwards, so you can just simply follow that link. And lastly, you can also just navigate to the website and find us quite easily through the data request portal on the website. So again, thank you, everybody. I will mute myself to give everyone a break and open it for Alicia or Haley, just in case I missed anything. But thanks, everyone, again.
Thanks, Kevin. I just want to mention there is a short URL for the data request. It's just winintelligence.org/data requests. So that will get you there faster. Like Kevin said, we're here for you guys if you have any questions. We work a lot too with your team or your board. If you're working with news or media or press releases, we can pull wage and labor market data for you on the ready, so you can get credited for having that knowledge as well. Yeah, so we just want to thank you for joining us. Please fill out the survey if you can. We would love to hear your feedback. We are not sure if we will continue this or if we should do it again. So your feedback is instrumental in making sure that that happens. Yeah, thanks again for joining us. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and we will talk to you all later.
Alicia, if you want to end the recording, do you want me to download the